This is Dr. C with another instructional video, and this one is specifically on MLA, and it's intended for my Writing 121 sections. But it's also quite useful. This video is also meant to be quite useful for my Writing 122 sections. The main reason I'm putting it together is over the years I've been teaching these online courses. I've noticed that students often struggle with MLA, and it is really sort of it's something that it's a regrettable issue, because it's actually quite easy to deal with MLA once you get some practice doing it, or negotiating MLA format, and knowing MLA format helps you learn other formats. But the problem that most students have, and I'll go over this in just a minute, is that they're unaccustomed to using their writing handbooks as handbooks. They often opt for other seemingly easy but awfully imprecise versions or tools to help them accomplish certain aspects of MLA formatting, citation, and documentation. And I'm mostly speaking about those online citation and documentation generators, which are what you see is what you get programs. In other words, you put sorry, not what you see is what you get. What I meant is garbage in, garbage out programs. Meaning, if you don't use them well, if you pick the wrong format for a particular citation or documentation, or you enter information into the wrong field, they will never tell you that you've made a mistake. You always have to use your handbooks to check your work in writing classes. That's what your writing instructors and professors do. And if you don't, you lose points for it. So I thought I'd put this video together to make sure that we have a proper introduction to the MLA section of our writing handbook, and I'm hoping this kind of facilitates your A, getting the handbook, B, opening the handbook, and C, using the MLA section of your handbook to check your work and make sure you don't lose any points for avoidable reasons. So, and this is really meant for the essays in this course. If you're in Writing 122, of course what I'm saying here applies to the installments of the annotated bibliography, but if you're writing 121 or 122 and you're worried about this for your analyses, you should use, especially what I'm getting ready to say about citation and documentation is actually quite useful for your analyses too. And of course those assignments are meant to help you, to give you some experience, practice doing this stuff. So you should use them, you should cite and document in your analyses, and you should use following advice to help you do so. Okay. First of all, there's another video. It's actually put together by someone at Kent State. You'll see a link to the this video in your. You'll see a link to this video in the comments of this one. You can click on. From this point forward in this video, I will assume that you've actually watched that video first before you continue watching the rest of this one. It's about seven and a half minutes long, and it's quite useful, especially if you are really out to sea when it comes to MLA stuff. It's important for you to go ahead and watch that one, and maybe that'll get you a little bit more kind of situated so that the rest of this video makes more sense to you. Okay, that video is quite useful as a review of MLA formatting more broadly, while this one is a lot more specific to this course and offers a lot, or my writing courses, my Writing 121 and 122 courses, and offers a lot more specific information on citing and documenting. Okay. So first of all, let's start off with making sure that you actually have the right handbook. This is an issue in this course. I'm not sure what's going on at the bookstore, but some students have come to see me during office hours recently with the wrong version of their writing handbook. It is the customized version of Writing Matters for Lane Community College that you should possess. Please do not ask me if you can use the handbook that you've already purchased if it's different from this one. This is the one that my department requires. This is the one I use in my writing classes. I know it works. I know it's good because I helped to draft it. So it's really important that you have this writing handbook. All page numbers from this point forward, all references to the MLA section of the writing handbook refers to the MLA section from this particular writing handbook. So again, this is the one you need to have. If you don't have it, you should be able to take your book back to the bookstore and say, hey, this is the wrong handbook. You guys sold me the wrong one. I need the right one, and they should have plenty of copies of this one. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is I kind of want to walk you through the MLA section of your handbook, and here I have a scanned version of the MLA section of your handbook. If you go to that handbook, you go to this handbook, right? The one that you're supposed to have, this one. You will see that it's the 6th tab in. Tab number 6 is the MLA, Documentation Matters MLA style. That's the section that that is the section that I that is the section that I scanned this from. That's the chapter that you see here. Okay, so if you go to that tab and you open up your handbook, the first thing you'll see is on the fold out that you when you open that tab up, that tab it leads to a fold out. All right, for the fold out, you see a list of basically it's a breakdown, it's an index of the chapter or table of contents for this chapter. Creating MLA style in-text citations, preparing an MLA list of works cited, using MLA for informational notes, which I won't go over here too much at all, if at all, and then formatting a paper in MLA style, which I'm not going to go over too much here. My emphasis in this video is going to remain on citation and documentation and signal phrases, actually, because that's important too. If you are interested in, well, I think you should be very interested in doing this. If you let me put it this way: if you have difficulty with formatting your paper according to the broader considerations of MLA, and I should stop for a second and sort of divide up what MLA is. MLA is about document-wide formatting as well as citation and documentation practices within the actual essay itself. Document-wide formatting, I try to handle in this course by using an MLA template. You will notice on the, if you haven't already, on the homepage for this course, there are two versions of the MLA template. One is an actual template, and the other is a PDF of that template. I'll try to bring it up here so you can see what I'm talking about. There is the, let's see, there are the templates I'm talking about. One is a template that's in a .doc format. The other one's a .pdf format. The .doc one, if you were to download and open it up, you could replace the text that it contains, and that's what I suggest that you do if you want to make sure that your work is formatted, broadly speaking, according to MLA format. There's actually a video that I think is on, if it's not online now, I will place it online shortly after I post this video. That's meant to help you guys with using this MLA template as a template. I'll go ahead and post that video as soon as I finish with this one, just to make sure that you guys have access to it too, just to help you, those of you that are struggling with MLA format. Now that we're coming to the point of the term where you're submitting your final draft of your first essays for a grade very soon, you'll find this video, that video about formatting your work using that MLA template to be quite valuable. So I'll go ahead and make sure that it's available too. Okay, so returning to the actual MLA section of your handbook, what I want to talk about today is the primarily signal phrases, citation, and documentation. Okay, now citation and documentation are defined on page 149, right? So here you have citation defined for you. Citation in MLA format is done in parenthetical form, meaning that in the body of the actual essay itself you see an in-text citation in parentheses for each source used. And for documentation, that's what happens in your works cited page. So citation is what happens in the body of the essay. Documentation refers to what happens in the works cited page. Knowing your terminology always helps with any conversation you have about anything. So as long as we know that citation and documentation are what they refer to, from this point forward you know what I'm talking about. Citation is in the body of the essay, documentation is what happens at the project's end in your works cited page. So signal phrases, oops, let me go back to the top of this. Signal phrases refer to the introduction and attribution of a source, introduction and attribution practices in the body of the essay. When you refer to somebody else's work, you must always indicate to the reader clearly that this work does not belong to you, and that's when you are summarizing it, paraphrasing it, or directly quoting it. Directly quoting it, usually people have an instinct that they need to go ahead and let people know what this is and who said it before they use a direct quote. But when it's paraphrased in summary time, people often forget the need to do that, to use signal phrases. So this section on signal phrases, which opens this passage or chapter on MLA, is actually quite important. You'll find here for the first, I believe, 3 pages. Yes, 3 pages. You will find some information on the use of signal phrases. Now, signal phrases in MLA are meant to work in conjunction with the citation that you provide to allow us to locate in your works cited page the particular source that you're referring to in that instance in the body of the essay. Again, signal phrases work with your citation to lead us to that particular source in your works cited page. They all work together. This means that signal phrases, actually, when you think about it, when you start getting into this in great detail, you'll notice that in certain instances, because signal phrases work hand in hand with citation, sometimes with particular sources, depending on how you use or construct your signal phrase, there's only certain information that you have to include in your parenthetical citation of that source. In other words, here's an example. If you have an online source and you mention the author's name and the title of the source in the signal phrase that you use before you provide anything that's paraphrased, summarized, or directly quoted from that source, then typically speaking, you only have to, in your parenthetical citation, reference a shortened form of the source's title. If the source's title is long, you can shorten it in a consistent way in your citation. You only have to present a shortened form of the source's title for parenthetical citation. The reason for that is simple. You've already said who does this, right? You've already given us the name of the author. At that point, because you've done that, then all you have to do is provide a shortened form of the title of the source in parenthetical citation, and because it's an online source, there's no page numbers. So knowing that signal phrases can actually change how you parenthetically cite certain sources is really, really, really important. It also explains why it's so difficult for us as instructors to teach, especially with online courses, to teach MLA style citation, documentation, and signal phrases to students who aren't willing to use their handbooks as handbooks. They aren't willing to use their handbooks or the MLA section of their handbooks as reference sources. In other words, you should, at the end of this term, have dog-eared the section of your handbook. You should be consulting it all the time. All the time. When I write essays and submit them for publication in MLA format, I do the same thing that I'm asking you to do now. I go to the handbook and I make sure on each instance of citation and documentation that I have done those things according to what MLA says needs to be done for those particular kinds of sources. So that's if you really want to start making your way through this in the best way possible, begin with this discussion of signal phrases that proceeds on to the third page, 151 of this chapter, and it helps give you a sense of how signal phrases can actually change what happens in the parentheses and parenthetical citation. This section begins a discussion of in-text citations right here. Of in-text citations more specifically. Now I'm going to page down just a little bit to page 150. There it is. Actually, page up. To this general principles of in-text citation. This is really important. If you are unfamiliar with in-text citation, or you want a refresher of it, or you just want to really know why you have to cite in the first place, this stuff here, this quick reference box on the general principles of in-text citation will help you with that. It'll also give you some general ideas as to what you're supposed to do with in-text citation, right? So you cite not only direct quotes, but also anything that you paraphrase, anything that you summarize, anything that you gather from a source, whether printed or online. Now, the rule of thumb is, if you're presenting a summary of an entire chapter or entire book, a broad summary, you, generally speaking, do not have to cite that. It's if you're summarizing particular parts of the argument, something that occurs within a certain page or page range. Paraphrasing usually refers to an activity that engages. Summary is larger than paraphrase, or broader than paraphrase. Summary is broad, paraphrase is more narrow, and direct quotes is the most narrow, right? So paraphrasing would usually mean that you're referring to a specific page or passage or page range, and you always cite when paraphrasing. This is a mistake students often make. And of course, you always cite when you directly quote. All three of these require the use of signal phrases before they occur. If you do not use signal phrases before they occur, you will lose points, especially if you submit this in your final draft of your essay. If I see evidence of this in the final draft of your essay, the lack of signal phrases before direct quotations, paraphrase, or broad summaries, you will lose points for that. In the direct quotation part of things, if you fail to provide signal phrases, then that'll be an example of, it's a classic example of what's referred to as a quote bomb. But if you fail to provide citation for your paraphrasing, you lose points as well. So keep that in mind as you draft your essays for this course. This also includes some good advice when it comes to citing, right? So I'll let you guys go over that and let me know if you have any questions about these general principles of in-text citation. Let's see, page 154. I'm going to go down to a couple of pages here. Includes this other quick reference box, which is very, very, very valuable. When you are working on your stuff and you're going back through and checking your citation, this box is something you'll refer to very frequently, because this is where you figure out what kind of source you're looking at, and based upon the kind of source that you're looking at, you can find these models that you can use to pattern your citation in that particular instance properly. So let's say you're dealing with a source. Let's see, one author source, and this includes, as you can see here, includes some evidence or some examples of how to compose signal phrases. If you, one really great way of using this quick reference is whenever you're referring to, when you're directly quoting or paraphrasing a source, you know you have to provide the citation for it, and you're not sure exactly how to construct the signal phrase properly, so it kind of guides the way. So you're not sure exactly how to construct your signal phrase and how to construct your parenthetical citation. This quick reference will point you to, if you can typify your source or figure out what kind of source it is that you're looking at, according to this list, then you would go to the page number that it lists, and it would show you how to cite that source given specific ways in which you might use signal phrases to set up that source. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me as I say it. I hope it makes sense to you as you hear it. You might want to rewind that a little bit. But basically, that's how you would use this. So if you have a source that's a selection from an anthology, and by the way, our book is an edited volume, our reader for this class, Rereading America, or if you're in my Writing 122 class, it's Argument in America. Those are readers. Every writing class practically has a handbook and has a reader. The reader is an edited volume full of stuff that the editors, generally speaking, haven't written themselves, but have gotten from other people and have included in the volume. That's an anthology. It's by definition an anthology. So anything from your reader actually is a selection from an anthology. So why don't we go here to page 157 and see how your handbook tells you ought to be citing stuff from an anthology. Here it is. If a source is a selection from an anthology, reader, or other collection, your citation should name the author of the selection, not the editor of the anthology. In the example below, Faulkner is the author of the selection in an anthology that was edited by Robert Diani, right? So you can see, because this example begins with a signal phrase that identifies the author of the short story A Rose for Emily. Because that's the case, Faulkner does not appear here. If this were left out and the sentence says, A Rose for Emily, for example, describes the title character, etc., then you would need to put Faulkner here because Faulkner doesn't appear here. This is one example of signal phrases working in conjunction with the citation. And if you know that they're working in conjunction, then in certain instances, it modifies the way in which you're supposed to actually construct the parenthetical citation for that particular instance. That's a classic example. So here is a great, if I were you, normally speaking, what I would always do is use the author's name and the source's name, and that typically speaking results in simpler patterns of a parenthetical citation. So just keep that in mind, right? I'm going to move on to a conversation about. Before I do that, I want to say this: if you don't use signal phrases well, if you don't cite well, and of course you don't document well, you risk readers not being able to find your sources, which will result in a less persuasive argument, and even more important for this class, it will result in a lower grade. So if you're kind of checking out at this point of the video, check back in, because this stuff is really important. Okay, I'm going to go on and start talking about. Let's see. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I'm covering everything. I have these typed up notes next to me. I know you can't see me, so I'm just letting you know what I'm doing. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say about citation. I want to move on to talk about documentation. which I believe begins here. On page 164, your conversation, specific conversation in this chapter on documentation begins on page 164. Now, page 164 also includes the 164 or 165. Let's see. Page 164 again begins the conversation on documentation. I'm just making sure I'm not missing a broader, more sort of general principles conversation. Nope. So the conversation in this book on works cited pages in MLA style begins here. So, okay, sorry about that. Let's see. Early on, you see it mention a quick reference box on page 166 to 167. Let's go to those pages. Just like with the quick reference box for the citation portion of this chapter, you'll see all these examples here and on this page I'll try to make this into a 2-page. Actually, I have to leave it 1 page because of the size of the screen. But anyways, you'll see all these examples listed here and here are of the kinds of works that you're likely to run across as you are doing research for classes in college and universities, right? College and university level courses where essays are required, research is required, and essays are required. These are the kinds of sources that you're likely to run across. And you would use this section in a very similar way that you would use the quick reference guide for citation that I just went over. You would figure out what kind of source you have, find it, the one the typification or classification or category that your source best fits under in this list, and then you would use that list to locate the model after which you should pattern your documentation of that source. Okay, so one or more selection from an edited book or anthology, printed or online. Hey, that's our reader. That's either Rereading America or Argument America, right? So if you wanted to document that source, you would go down to page 168, which I think I just overshot. 168, edited book or anthology, printed or online. When citing the book as a whole, you would treat the editor as the author and insert the abbreviation after the name. So if you're citing the book as a whole, this is how you would do it. But hey, everything gets a little tricky, right? Is this really our book? Or are you looking at something a little bit more specific than this, like an entry in an edited book or anthology? So here, this would be the way that you would cite the entire book. Let's say you're talking about the editors of Rereading America or Argument in America. This is how you would this is how you would document the entire book, or anything that the editors themselves provided. If you're focused on not the articles that appear in our book, but rather the material between the articles where the editors talk about certain issues, so on and so forth, or give you advice, then you would use this pattern of documentation. But let's see, since what we're looking for is how to document items in an edited volume or anthology, it gets a little bit more complicated. I'm trying to find the exact, sorry about that. Let's see, entry and reference work, introduction, rendition, input. One or more selections, there it is, 168. One or more selections, right? So same page, couple down. This is actually how you would document items from the reader for this course, right? Rereading America, I'm looking at that book right now, so I'll use that one as an example, was edited by Colombo, Cullen, and Lyle. I'm opening this book up right now, and I'm looking at a reading called, let's see, Against School, on page 114 of Rereading America. So, according to this, I would list the author of the article first, John Taylor Gatto, using his last name first. The title of the selection, in quotation marks, with a period inside the quotation marks. I'd provide the title of the anthology or edited volume. I would list the editor names here. If you have more than one editor, it's eds, period. Then you list them in the order in which they appear with a comma between them. And you would put an and before the very last one. So in this case, it would be Gary Colombo, comma, Robert Cullen, comma, and Bali Lyle, period. Then you would provide the publication information for the rest. The rest of this is publication information, the edition, the city of publication, the name of the publisher, the year in which the book was published, the page range for your selection, and then, very important, you would indicate that this was a print volume. So, let's say, why don't I go ahead and do this one just to make sure everyone gets what I'm talking about, how you would use this as a way of modeling your own, right? So, I want to make sure this is double spaced first of all. Spacing should be here. Really? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So, cultural. And spell correctly. And right now what I'm doing is I'm just going to the publication information for this book. That's available in the first couple of pages of any book that you ever pick up. That's where you can find the publication information for the book. And it will include the city of publication for the book, as well as the publishing house, which is what I'm looking for right now. So. Nope, that's a comma, not a colon, right there. And let's see. I need to change this so it's more accurate. Then you include the page range. An MLA format, as you will experience the more you do this stuff, tends to abbreviate whenever possible. So you see Bedford St. Martin's doesn't include press, and you will, as you do more of this work, you'll notice that were this the University of Oregon Press, it would look like this. Because in MLA, in documentation practices in MLA, include a lot of strange or idiosyncratic seeming abbreviation practices. But that's how it would look if we were dealing with a university press. You'll see that I shortened university and I shortened press, right? And normally speaking, you leave out press. With these commercial presses, you leave out press afterwards. So it's just Bedford St. Martin's, and it would be, if you were looking at, for instance, Routledge Press, it would just be Routledge, not Routledge Press. I include the page range here, and then I have to do this, and then now my documentation is nearly complete. The one thing that I have left off here is the need to do hanging indentation. And this is how I accomplish hanging indentation. If you, in your works cited page, if you have more than one work listed, keep in mind that all your entries in your works cited page have to be alphabetized, and you alphabetize according to the first thing that sticks out here, right? So that's one of the reasons that's one of the main reasons you see MLA using hanging indentation. It's actually meant to make sources easier to find for readers who are quickly going down a very long, if you can imagine doing a very complicated project. You have lots and lots of sources. Then readers might have to actually page through lots and lots of sources to find the one that you refer to in your citation, right? Hanging indentation like this makes it easier for readers to find sources in a works cited page. The little things to remember in works cited pages: if it's just one work, it's work. If it's more than one work, it has to be works. Must hanging indent, and your sources have to be alphabetized, like I've just said. Typically speaking, you'll alphabetize with a source's last name like this. Sometimes some sources don't have their last name, or they don't use your last name. That's not the first thing that appears, like the name of a film, for instance. Typically speaking, the first thing that will appear is the title of that film, so you alphabetize according to the title of the film. If it's something like The Silence of the Lambs, you would, of course, skip the and alphabetize according to silence, right? Articles and determiners, when you are alphabetizing, are normally left out. They're left out in MLA as well. The initial articles and determiners, I should say. So that's how I would document a reading from the reader that I'm using in my Writing 121 course currently. I strongly suggest that you familiarize yourself with this particular pattern, because you're likely to run across it very, very, very often. Many students, when they're doing research for classes like this, end up using edited volumes. So this particular pattern is a really great one to sort of learn. You don't have to learn all these patterns. There's a lot of them. That's why you have a reference book, right? But if you have one kind of in your head that you know that you use very frequently, it helps speed things up, because obviously when you get it down pat and you learn it well, then you don't always have to consult with your handbook to see what that pattern is, right? So let me do one more. I'm going to go to here. This is my Writing 121 that I'm teaching currently, and I'm going to page down to the very first screening that we did. It's for this video, which if I were to click on it, would open in this window, right? So the video is actually hosted by LCC. It's on my course website. So you could use something like this, and I'll go ahead and make this available to you as well. For online video, I'm going to go back to your handbook just to see what it says here and make sure I'm not confusing anyone. Yes, Audiovisual Sources. One of the negative parts of these handbooks, and this really sort of became an issue after the internet really became much more of a factor for academic and scholarly work. Before, just print sources, right? So there's only certain different kinds of print sources that you are likely to encounter, and MLA was a lot simpler then. But with the proliferation of online sources, it's almost as if MLA and other types of formatting conventions like APA, Chicago, Turabian, etc., all of them are always playing a little bit of catch-up, because there's different kinds of sources that come up all the time. And one thing that you don't see listed here, if you were to go through all these audio and visual sources, is where you see online video clip. But if we go to page 180, there. Okay, motion picture film. Film is what you use if you actually watch the movie in a movie theater. Video or DVD is what you would use if you watch the video in recorded form at home, right? Internet download, there you go. That's how you would actually, if you were to download a video for this course from a particular location, then this is how you would go ahead and format your documentation of it. for an online video clip, this is actually sort of specific to YouTube, and it can be a little bit confusing for students. So I tend to use this, which is meant for videos that are on Canopy streaming, which we use sometimes in my Writing 121 and 22 courses. I use this and I provide this to students often as a model to use for any videos that they stream in this class. Here, the title of the video, right? Then the publisher of the video, which is typically available in the video's credits. The date of publication. Typically, you can find that by running a search for the video in sources such as IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, will have the videos listed and it will tell you when they were originally published. Then you would list the database that you're streaming them from, and for the purposes of this course, it would be LCC course website, right, or course website for Writing 121, and then you would post the permalink to it, which is the link that you see here, right? So if you were to put together documentation for this particular video, I'm going to try to do it myself so I can add it to my documentation here. Return. Let's see. And I'm going to go to this just to pull up the information. IMDb, hierarchy, house I live in. There. So we can get the publication information for this video. I apologize, my internet's running a little bit slow because I'm recording at the same time as I am searching. Okay. So, there's your publication information for this video listed by the good folks at IMDb. This is a great website, great resource for film folks. If you've never seen it before, I recommend that you use it to find information for the films that you screen in this and any other course that you take. Okay, so it gives you director's name, gives you date, well, it gives you the entire cast list, including publishers or producers, etc. And if you ever need anything like that. You can find it here. Here's all your details. Date of release. There's the video. Date of release of the video is located here. The production company is located here. So everything that you need to document this film is actually located right here. So let's go here. And Jarecki. Make sure I got this exactly right. Oh, no, I don't. Here, just want to check something real fast. Channel. And that will be it. That's how you would document a video that you're streaming from the course website. And you would do a similar thing for a video like this, which we also watch in my Writing 121 course, but it's obviously hosted by someone else. You run a very similar, use that same pattern that I just used to document this video as well. Okay. So, if let's see here, Joel, H-I-G-F-G-H-I. Sorry, this is my notes you're looking at here. I minimize those and I pull this down so it's a little easier to see. Okay. Yeah, so E-F-G-H, right? D is, you leave the D out. When you're alphabetizing, you leave the D out. You go for the first thing after the initial article or determiner. So these are properly alphabetized, right? If this guy's last name were Zato, it would not be properly alphabetized, and I would have to take this and I would have to move it. Z. I have to take this and move it down here. Just this is not complicated. A period is actually part of this, but it's not part of the link, so I want to make sure that's right. There, that's right now. Now, if this guy's last name was Zato, then this would be properly alphabetized now, but it's not. So let's go ahead and put it back where it belongs. There. Okay. I hope all of this makes sense. I'm sorry about the meandering later portion of this, but I just wanted to walk you through a couple of examples that I did for you. There. That's how I do that. So yes, I hope all of this makes sense. I hope this helps you with at least getting acclimated or decoding MLA and making it a little more likely that you will actually use this handbook and this chapter in your handbook to ensure that your work is properly cited and documented, and that you're using signal phrases properly, and that your signal phrases and your citation practices match up. Okay? Let me know if you have any other questions. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I hope this video helps. I really, 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 really hope it helps. Thanks a lot for your help. Thanks a lot for your engagement in this course, and let me know if you have any questions. I will include links, before I close up, I will include links in the comments of this. I will include links to this particular resource, as well as to that video that I mentioned at the very beginning of this, that Kent State MLA format video that you really should watch before you've watched this entire video. So, okay, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.